Hi, my name is Pat, and I am really honored to be here. You know, tomorrow night is my senior prom, but I made sure I made time for this because this is really just an honor that I didn't expect, and I'm just really privileged to be a part of. So thank you for having me. I was born 17 years ago to my parents, Angelica and Jose. My dad was born in Mexico and raised there for a few years, and my mom was born in California, here. So they were both raised in kind of religious households and taught the Catholic way of life, or so stereotypes show us. But they didn't really expect their life or their son to take them to where I have today. I was born Patrick Anthony Cordova, and I was assigned male at birth. And for many years, I lived as male and identified as Patrick. It wasn't until my sophomore year where I finally understood who I was, and I decided this was the point in my life where I was going to love that person, and I came out to my parents on June 21st, 2011. And the result of that, I would never have thought would have happened. My mother, who to this day states that she always knew, my mom could not have been more supportive, and that day instantly took me to the restroom, showed me what makeup was, started the whole she was happy that I was able to love myself, and she was kind of allowed to love me for who I was. Since then, my life has kind of changed dramatically. I went from being this smart, shy boy in class to finally being the outspoken girl that I knew I always was. I originally came out my first time in 7th grade to my best friend, Vicky. And it was kind of a moment that stays with me today because I turned to her after school and I was like, "Hey, Vicky." She's like, "Hey, Pat." And I was like, "I'm gay." She's like, "I'm lesbian." And in that moment, we both understood what we had gone through, and obviously we felt each other's pain and life stories all in 1 second because we both finally understood. We were both able to express ourselves to the first person ever. So we cried and we laughed and we talked about everything possible before her parents came home and I ran home. But after my 8th grade year, I actually transferred districts to Susa, which is a city like an hour away, and I was back in the closet. So that whole transition back into the closet after I had come out was really difficult. But like I said, my sophomore year, I was finally able to come out again. And really this time was seriously because I came out to my family and to my nana, who really meant a lot to me. And the support really pushed me to where I am today. So I started my own personal transition, trying to try feminine clothing, feminine lifestyle, because before that, I was really scared of what people would say or what people would think. So I was really kind of living for what others thought. But after my sophomore year, I grew out of that. I loved myself, and I started my own personal transition. And surprisingly, but happily, my school really accepted me, and my student body was more than accepting. They were almost loving and encouraging, to the point where, like, if I didn't wear makeup, they were kind of like, "Where's your makeup, Pat?" And that really shocked me because all the stories I've heard of these trans leaders were negative or they had bad experiences, and I almost assumed I would have one too. But I was more than happy to not. So my junior year was the first time that I wore earrings to school. It was the Boys versus Girls rally, which actually no longer happens at our district, but it was a rally that I had feared for 2 years because I would be with the boys in the stands, and for the 45 minutes of our rally, I would just pray and talk to myself and hope that nothing was going to happen. But my junior year was the first year that I wore pink, and I wore earrings, and I wore makeup, and I was finally happy on the girls' side. And that was the moment where I was like, even if people are going to say things, which they did, it was okay because I had my girls behind me and I was able to be myself. But like I had experienced before where I was almost forced to transition back into the closet, my family situation had gotten more difficult. Prior to that, my freshman year, my family had become homeless because of personal financial reasons and my parents' unemployment. So I had dealt with homelessness for the past 3 years, and I was totally fine because that was my home life and that didn't affect my scholar, and I was still a 4.0 student. I was still in every club possible, so I was fine. But it wasn't until we really just couldn't afford the luxuries of life, which I almost took for granted before that. My senior year was the year that we kind of, I guess you can say, hit rock bottom. We almost couldn't afford the nightly rate of our motel room. And although that didn't affect me emotionally, that affected me physically because I wasn't able to afford the makeup I wanted or the clothes that I felt comfortable in. So I resorted back to hand-me-downs for my cousins, which were really masculine and really not my type, but I had. Being forced to wear these clothes or not have makeup was okay because inside I knew who I was and my expression didn't really affect them. But apparently it did affect the perspective of my peers. Starting my senior year was this stage where I had to deal with an almost ironic state of my transition where I wasn't trans enough, according to my student body. I wasn't feeling the stereotype of a trans girl because apparently when you're a trans girl, you're supposed to look like a girl 24/7, whatever a girl looks like. And I mean, I never read the definition of a girl or how they're supposed to look. I didn't know there was these rules of life. But that's what society had given us. So my whole senior year, I kind of dealt with that because emotionally I knew who I was and that was okay, and my friends and people who meant a lot to me knew, and that's all I needed. But I had to deal with not being not accepted for trans, but not being the right kind of trans, which is an idea which is crazy in my mind, but my reality. But I didn't let that stop me. My whole life I had been inspired by Princess Diana, who actually passed away when I was a year old. I knew nothing of her my whole childhood until my mom started talking about her. And I started researching her, and I realized that that was the kind of person I wanted to be, who ignored what a princess was supposed to do and did what her heart told her to do. And that's what I wanted to do. So I vowed to myself that I would be the Princess Diana of our generation, which is my senior quote in the yearbook. And, you know, with that, I knew I needed a crown. So I ran for homecoming queen my senior year. And I didn't win, but I realized that Diana was never a queen, so that's okay that I was never a queen either. But that was my first really public coming out again, and saying even if I didn't wear a dress to the homecoming game, I was still a princess. And that was a time where, after my kind of going back again into the closet, I was now out again, and I was ready to answer questions of, Pat, if you want to be a girl, why don't you look like one? And I was ready to answer questions and try to educate people because, in the end, in my opinion, being an activist is not about shoving ideas down people's throats. It's about educating them and opening their eyes to new change and possibilities. And that's my whole activist life, is education. So after the homecoming race, which even if I had lost, was still a great experience, I continued my term as AC president because the year before that I had run for president and I actually won. So I continued that, and that was my one source to help my student body understand what this was, because using my label as AC president, I was able to have the voice and share opinions and share stories and kind of open the eyes of my district, which I'm glad that are open now. My senior year after that was kind of like a normal senior year, I guess you can say. I studied, I partied, I did different things that I was glad I marked off my bucket list for senior year. But then came spring season of sports. Before that, during my freshman year, I had played baseball because I had played baseball my whole life since I was 4 years old. And my sisters played softball, and we were kind of known to be the family at the park who had the kids who could play. But I quit my freshman year because I just wasn't comfortable, I wasn't safe, and I knew that wasn't for me. So my senior year, when AB 1266 passed, thanks to help of many, like the Transgender Law Center, I was able... I saw this as my ticket to officially be happy and officially do what I wanted to do. So I tried out for softball. And that was scary. Not because, I mean, the whole varsity thing was scary. I wanted to make varsity because if I didn't, my sister would totally make fun of me because she was 4-year varsity. But that was scary in a sense of, I wasn't only battling the whole transgender issue and who I was, but now this additional factor of, because I'm biologically male, I had this advantage over these girls. And a whole bunch of accusations and allegations that are totally false, but my reality again. So my battle during tryouts were different than most girls, I can say, because I was playing softball for me. Like I said, I wanted to love myself and be myself, and softball was that way. But now I was dealing with people who didn't even know me across the country, who were writing these articles about him and he and this monster and this 17-year-old person who's trying to take advantage of girls. And, you know, I'm not attracted to girls, so I'm not taking advantage of them. No offense, girls. But all these things were added upon the additional stress of just softball. But like I'm happy to announce, I did make the varsity team, and I am playing on this team. And that comes with a lot of gratitude from not only lawmakers and advocates, but my own district, my own stereotypically conservative district who from last year I would never have thought would come this far. But for my supporters like my friend here, my district has come so far in support of trans students where I now feel comfortable on the team. I now feel comfortable playing the sport that I had so much passion for, but was scared to play for so many years. So now my senior year is pretty much over. Prom is tomorrow, and after that it's just graduation. But what I've learned, I feel, is so much more than the typical senior student. I've learned not only to love myself, but love others and teach others the importance of loving themselves. Because in this world, we have cruel people. We have people who just aren't educated or have the benefit of being educated, of diversity. But it's not our job, in my opinion, as activists, to shame them or to push them in a corner and tell them what to do. It's our job to educate them and open their eyes, because the world is changing every day. And I think the secret of life, like Princess Diana said, is not to lead by our head, but by our heart. And that's what I intend to do. This fall, I'll be a freshman at New York University, where I plan to major in political science. And hopefully, and with all sincerity, I plan to run for President of the United States in 2035. So vote for me. But I like to end this with just asking you all to continue your beautiful life and continue your fight for equality, because I know we are on the verge of change, and we have gotten so much done. And before I was even born, this fight was going on, and now we continue it. And I can only imagine what the future generations will prosper from and benefit from because of beautiful people like you and beautiful events like this. So thank you all so much, and I am honored to be here once again.